Welcome to Nomadic Diaries. I'm Doreen Cumberford, your host, and it's my privilege to introduce you to Megan Norton Eubanks, my wonderful co-host in this fabulous series, The Belonging Project. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Doreen. Doreen and I are so pleased to welcome on the show today Marcia Bonato Warren. Marcia is a trauma-informed body psychotherapist, somatic counselor, and an author with over 30 years of cross-cultural and mental health experience. Her therapy practice, Embodied Code-Switching, focuses on developing the resilience and unique expression of multicultural identities through somatic awareness and body choice and cultural fluidity. She is proud of her heritage and the gifts of her ancestors and identities as an enrolled member of the Santa Clara Pueblo in New Mexico and as Brazilian Italian. And her first book was just released in March. It's called Movement and Identity, Multiculturalism, Somatic Awareness, and Embodied Code Switching. Welcome, Marcia.
Thank you. What a lovely introduction. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. Doreen and Megan, thank you so much for inviting me. I love this project. It's such a timely and yet timeless topic, I think we as humans have always wanted and to understand what belonging means. And I love that we're having a conversation about it. And since I am very somatic, to explore what it's like to feel belonging in our bodies. So thank you. Thank you.
Oh, we're so excited to have you here. So, Marcia,
Yes.
tell us about this word somatic for our listeners. What is it? And you are deep, deep, deep into the value of this terminology and this way of being and thinking. Can you give us sort of the short version for our listeners so that we can all start to think about this topic?
Absolutely. I think, the word somatic comes from the word soma, which is body, right, in Greek. So that's where the terminology originates. Um, But really, somatic to me is much more than just the body. I mean, it is including the body in our daily lives and processes. And what I mean by that is so often we override the consciousness of our body, we override the signals of our body, we override the wisdom of our bodies. And so all of us have one. That is how we exist on this plane of existence, right? And not to go too spiritual with it, but really the only way we can interact with our environments and the only way our spirits move through this world is with this body that we have been born into, right? But oftentimes we don't really think about it, right? And so having a somatic awareness is not just about having your body, but also understanding the information we're receiving through it, and the information that is coming in our environment that we are traveling, So wherever our bodies are, we are interacting with our environment. If you think about it, our skin is what touches the air, that simple. So, we don't know what temperature is unless our bodies tell us what the temperature is. We don't know, if we have the gift of hearing, what the sounds are in our environment unless our ears tell us, right? Same thing about sight. All the five senses are portals to an experience that we're having in our bodies. At the same time, we have our own internal sensations that are going on that are not necessarily independent of our environment, but definitely have a lot of their own messaging and a lot of their own wisdom that can be really a beautiful source to tap into as we live our lives.
Mm.
Mm. And you're going to see another somatic person back here, Ish, my cat Oregano. So she'll be joining us to like demonstrate movement and sensation, I'm sure, every once in a while. So
All beings are welcome into
yeah.
this space,
So sweet.
Yes.
furry or not.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, and part of I think what, being in our bodies might mean for folks is even considering culturally how our bodies are represented, So I think for many folks, the first place to explore is okay, what have my cultures, what have my, societal rules and norms told me about my body, not just body size, but really what is the purpose of my body? What are the ways that I'm allowed to be in relationship with my body? What other bodies can I be in relationship with? You know, if we think about that, through, and I live in the United States, so a US dominant cultural lens. I identify as female. So all those cultural norms are kind of placed on top of me and my body. My body reflects my cultures, which are not from that. Well, one is, I'm indigenous from the United States, but then my mother's from Brazil, and I happen to have more of a Brazilian body type if we're going to generalize. So for me, having this body in the States, and in particular where I live now, I don't see many other bodies like mine around. So, that starts sort of an awareness of like, okay, it's not just this physical thing that I'm in, but really all of the messaging and all of the beliefs that I have about myself and even the way I behave is determined by how I feel my body to be received in the environment that I'm in, and then what beliefs I have about it myself.
Very, very interesting. I noticed that since I moved to Mexico, because I'm not from the US
Mhm.
and I'm from Scotland, and I
Mhm.
noticed since I moved to Mexico, one of the reasons I love living here is people are more close to my height. And I actually get joy out of that every day. I go like, oh, they wear my size clothes. I can look them in the eye.
Yeah.
And I did not have the experience of speaking to many people eye to eye when I lived in the US.
hmm hmm And that, to me, these are some of the important things to just, I want to validate for folks, Um, when we are in environments where we don't see or have our bodies reflected back to us in some way, that can cause a sense of isolation and otherness, right? So for me, that, I live in Boulder, Colorado. And like I said, there are not many folks that look like me around. And so for me, it's just kind of like a low-level hum of not belonging. And my
Yes.
nervous system knows that. And so I'm never quite fully relaxed.
Oh.
And I remember the first time I went to the Summer Institute for Intercultural Communication. And, Jack Condon, as I was talking to you all before we started recording, is a dear friend of my father's, and he's the one who encouraged me to go. And he said, you're going to find your people there.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, let's see. Well, when I went, of course, everyone looked different, which is, I love that too. That's very calming to me. But I think what ended up happening is because folks' experiences were so similar and our stories were so similar in some way that my body recognized that there were others like me in the space. And it's one of the spaces that I've been in my life where my nervous system just went, ooh, just calm. And
Mm.
so that's the other indicator, in my body where I can feel a sense of connection and belonging is if I'm not on high alert, if I'm not in hypervigilance, if I can take a deep breath and notice that there are others that have similarities, whether that's body type or experience or energetic, however people want to feel into it. That's what I pay attention to kind of on the nonverbal level in my own system of like, okay, I feel safe here.
I love that. That is so, um, that's so tangible and relatable
Yeah.
because even even if there's not that exterior way of noticing the
Yeah.
body's at rest,
Yeah.
um, um, it's something that when we're in community, I think it's a unifying thing,
Yeah.
an unspoken thing. And I'm wondering as you move in different cultures, we've mentioned Brazilian Pueblo international spaces. How does your body remember how to belong to each one?
Ooh, that is such a great question. In some way, it's not about remembering how to belong. It's about, how can I put this? Because it is such a deeply nonverbal somatic experience for me. It's trusting my body and its nervous system to respond to what I'm experiencing to let me know that I'm in a space that feels um, comfortable with the potential of belonging. Because I think belonging is a more of a long-term kind of situation. And what I mean by that is like belonging has a lot to do with how you continue to receive information that this is a good place for me, or these are folks that I think I could connect with. But sometimes you need time in order to build what that means, right? Um, for me, oftentimes my mind will try to override everything, right? So it's like I will try to learn as much as I can about a place or try to, figure out the do's and the don'ts, pay attention to all of the things that I think I'm supposed to pay attention to. And if I don't pay attention to what my body's telling me,
Mm.
then if those messages are different, then I'm not going to feel at ease. So, I think another example might be, if I've had, and many folks have had the experience of, doing something wrong, quote unquote, wrong culturally, right? Breaking a rule or a norm. And some of those are very, very deeply held. So we're not going to know what those are. I will know that in my body because my indicators are that I stop breathing, I hold my breath, my shoulders get tight,
Mm.
I feel like my vision gets narrow. Um, those are some of the indicators that my body tells me that, oh, I think I may have crossed the line there, right? So conversely, if I'm looking for things that help me feel like I belong, I'm able to breathe. I can take a deep breath. I'm able to take in more in my environment. Um, I tend to be able to hear more in terms of like conversation and pay attention to that. Um, these are all kind of my indicators that I've learned over time. So I think, your question is a good one, but it can't be generalized. It's really, how do you know your own body based on the experiences that you've had in your life, the
Mm.
places that you've gone, and the cultures that you've been a part of. Um, like, the breadth and the depth of the experience that people have had internationally, I think gives more ability for us to travel in those in-between spaces and hopefully give ourselves grace when we do step on some of the cultural toes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I had an experience. I lived in Saudi Arabia for 15 years
Mm.
and then wrote the book.
Yeah.
And when I went back in 2015, can't believe it's 10 years ago now, I was joyous.
Mm.
And I remember there were some differences. The first time we went in, we had to to give away our passports, and everything was so foreign and different. Well,
Mm.
after I went back, after not living there for 5 years, um, I remember I didn't have to wear a head cover to go into the immigration office.
Mm.
And the guy could fully see me, although I was wearing an abaya, no problem.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget the way my body felt that day.
Mm.
It was almost like it was almost like it was living in an atmosphere where every molecule said, "Welcome home."
Mm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so was that what I was experiencing? A somatic memory
Yes.
revelation? Like,
Yes.
ah, I'm home. I'm
Yeah.
comfort.
Yeah.
Comfortable.
Exactly. And this is the interesting thing is, as a somatic therapist, when I've worked with clients, we'll go into part of the session where it's about processing, and we invite really just the space to let all voices in, not just the mind, not just the emotions, but the body. And when we go into the body, I will ask, okay, so if there's a particular, let's say there's a hand movement that's emerging, with the narrative, right? What would your hand say to you right now? What words would your hand have? And we just go with it. And you would be amazed at the messages that come through our body. So, I think that's the dialogue that I want to encourage folks to have is like when you're in this space, like what you just described, Doreen, it's like, oh, what is my body telling me? And it says, you're
Yeah.
home. Okay,
Yeah.
believe it. Like
Yeah.
that's the
Yes.
message that's going to believe that message.
It's
Because some folks will
real.
be like, well, I shouldn't feel that way. Well, okay. you know, and sometimes it can be completely opposite of what you would think,
Mm.
like what you just said, I think you said your passports were taken away or something when you were coming in that was
The
different,
first
right?
time we ever arrived in Saudi Arabia, we
Yeah.
had to rescind our passports and everything. But this time, I could actually talk to the guy and communicate and eye to eye, and
Uh-huh.
he could see my hair color, which
Yeah.
wasn't this.
Yeah.
And it was just very different.
Yeah.
It was just like it just landed and all the cells kind of lit up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, when you give yourself the opportunity to notice and then to get curious and then to listen, right, to what your body's telling you, that's
Mm.
where you're going to get your messages, you know? And same thing about not belonging in places that are not safe. I also want to like encourage people, if you're getting that message, trust that message too, because, you know, so often when we're in different places or we're in a new place that we're trying to be a part of, we force the process and we try to go too fast, right? Or we put ourselves in places that we're not prepared for yet because we don't know what the cultural norms are. If your body's telling you it's too soon, it's not safe, I don't know enough, whatever else it is, like trust that. Use your body as radar as well because it knows. It picks up. It picks up on other bodies, on the environment, on the context. So um, there is no rush, you know? There's no rush.
That's very soothing.
Mm. Well, there are, I will tell you, when I was on a study abroad program when I was younger called Semester at Sea, which still exists, which I'm very happy that it does. It's a ship that goes around the world with, students and it's an amazing program. I think it's an amazing program. Um, it was 1989. So the years that when I was traveling, it was right before it was when Yugoslavia still existed. And we docked in Dubrovnik right when tensions were starting, right?
Mm.
We also visited the Soviet Union when it was still the Soviet Union. So we were in places that were on the brink of change. And because the ship was well known with certain folks, I guess people would know that we were coming in. I remember one, I think was it Yugoslavia? No, it was Turkey that we were in. So this is a different example. But we got off the ship, and I remember there was maybe a group of three or four young men, and what was I? I was a junior in college, and they wanted to take us out. We had never met, like I was with the group as well, coming off the ship. They knew about the ship. They met us. And at that time, there were no cell phones. So they're like, we can take you to a payphone that you can call home for free. And we're like, okay, interesting. And I remember in that moment, this is way before I was doing anything with somatic, right? And I just got really quiet in my body. I'm like, I know I shouldn't trust this. My mom's voice would be like, are you kidding? You don't know these people, what do you know? And I'm like, what do I feel? And
Mm.
my gut was like, it's okay.
Yes.
So I went with them. And they were the sweetest people I have ever met. They took us out. We had Uzo. They took us to the phone booth. We called our friends. It's like it was just a lovely evening. They showed us an album where they had photos of all the other folks that they had met. They looked forward to the ship coming because they knew that they could meet people from a different country and have a different experience. They were completely sweet and honorable and like it was amazing. So, it's like that situation on the outside should have been a no, but my body said, no, it's okay. It's a yes.
Mm.
It's one of the more lovely experiences I had on that trip. So,
You talk about sensation interpretation and action, the
yeah.
SIA loop. Is that an example of that? What you were feeling and interpreting?
Yeah, actually. Ooh, Megan, that's awesome. Thank you. Um, and just, full disclaimer, I think because I'm in, the mental health field, we have so many models and loops and this and that, that for me, I wanted to kind of quantify what my experience had been, and what I'd seen clients working with and just in general, how I wanted to describe what feels like a feedback loop to me. But, in reality, none of these things are separate. So they all can happen simultaneously. But I think by breaking it down a bit, it kind of helps to see where maybe you land first, right? So for me, sensation is about what I feel in my body, the internal sensations, but also what I'm getting from my environment, the external sensory input, right? So noticing that first. And then, holding that, being like, okay, this is what I'm getting from this. And then interpretation is really giving space to what am I thinking? What are my thoughts around this? What are my emotions around this? That's my interpretation, right? Knowing full well that this is subjective. So it's like, what's coming up right now in terms of internal belief about myself, about others? What's my emotion coming up around it? And then the action piece is what do I do or not do, right? And that's the behavioral piece. So I wanted to slow that process down because oftentimes we start off with the thoughts, right? The shoulds, I should be doing this, or I'm a bad person, or if I knew more, and that's legitimate to let it arise, but that's not the only source of knowledge that we have within us. And it also takes away our ability for choice. And that's why in the action part, I say, what do we do or not do? We always have a choice. So even if that in the moment, you know, you don't want to do something, that's legitimate. Don't do that. If it's like, I really don't want to engage in conversation right now because I don't know how to do that, it's okay to be silent, you know?
Mm. And where does the cross-cultural piece or the intercultural piece fit into that model? Would it be in the interpretation?
It's for me, that piece is central to the embodied code switching loop. So that's the second part of sort of what when we're moving in between cultures, that is sort of the gear, the mechanism that helps us shift. Okay. Because if, and this is for everyone that's listening right now, already when you're shifting from one culture to another, whether you're physically changing locations or you're feeling it in your body as you yourself embody one culture and you're going into another cultural environment. We know that, right? How we describe it, that's what the loop is helpful to do. So it's like, for me, I guess I can give an example because right now in my life, it's more predominant for me to go back and forth into Santa Clara, Pueblo, than it is for me to go to Brazil. When I was younger, it was Brazil. I was going back and forth, every couple years for a few months. So it was immersion, come back, right? Um, when I go back to either of these environments, I can feel the shift in what my body wants to do first. You know, like I said, I don't have the body type of a typical Pueblo woman. I just don't. I look like a Brazilian woman. In the past, when I wasn't as conscious about it, when I was coming into the space, not even there yet, but coming like driving into where Santa Clara is, which is near Santa Fe, but not, it's about half an hour away. I could feel myself trying to make myself shrink.
Mm.
Like, and I would get myself a little bit tighter, more contained, because I felt like the movements, because I do a lot of this with my hands, I didn't see that as much. So, like, I was really, unconsciously trying to make myself into a shape that I'm not actually a shape in, right? But that was part of it. My tone would get different in my voice. I would speak a little bit slower. I was just very good at like seeing how people were behaving and then trying to match that. That's where the observational piece came in. But if it's unconscious, it can feel strange in your body to do that. And it can feel hard to do that, right? Because you never feel like you're enough. You can't ever fit totally, right?
No.
But you can try, right? Um, so unconsciously, that's what I was trying to do. And in Brazil was a different experience because I had the body type. So there was not that need for me to kind of conform my body to another body type. But I didn't have the language in either one of those environments. My parents didn't speak, Tewa from Santa Clara or Portuguese to us when we were growing up at home. So for me, the language part of it was where I couldn't quite get into what the cultural norms were. So that's why I think, when you're working with the SIA loop or the SIA loop, it's really important to honor what the internal beliefs are that come up. Because for me, because I didn't have the language and I didn't know what people were saying, and I was trying my best to fit in, there was a lot of self-judgment that came up and it would make me freeze. So either I would, you know, try to move in the way that I thought people were moving, or I would just, I wouldn't know what to do and I would just freeze. And
Mm.
it's because my thoughts were making me stuck, you know? Like you're not good enough. You don't know, how come you don't know Portuguese? You should have learned it. And, all those things kind of going there. And I'm not enough. I'm not enough. That was the basic um, belief that ran through me. With time, as I realized I'm going to feel those sensations, I could allow for some measure of trying to move with my cultures and other cultures, but it became really important for me to understand that I had my own movements and to keep those. So I keep my hands no matter what. I'm a hugger. So like now I warn people, quote unquote, I'm a hugger. And they're like, okay, so even at the Pueblo, yay, okay, good. They know I'm gonna hug, and people hug. I'm not saying that they don't, but that like
Yeah.
the way, that folks hug, as touch is a very culturally bound thing. So, that's something we have to be aware of. So, but it's not about negating who you are. It is actually about discovering who you are amidst all of the cultures that you have been um, a part of. That's going to be the hard part for a lot of folks that travel between cultures, that live between cultures, is that you can easily lose yourself and not have a sense of self as you're trying to adjust to everyone. So
And so
that, yeah,
that's where,
that loop is to keep you in to yourself.
sorry.
No,
So
no, it's okay.
that's where we start to build a sense of belonging.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm just reflecting back. We interviewed someone last week from Japan. And do you remember Megan? She said, I notice when I go to Tokyo, my head inflection changes, my stature, I tend to shrink.
Hmm.
And I thought, note to self.
Yeah.
That's amazing that we can be different in different cultures.
Now, if we do that consciously, that is a beautiful um,
Yes.
gift that we give to those cultures that we're in. It's respectful, I think, right? It's also a way of attuning, which I also think is a superpower for folks that are multicultural in this way, right? Again, if it's done consciously and not with this not with an air of imitation. That's not what I'm saying at all. There's something called mirror neurons. I don't know if you all have heard about mirror
Yes.
neurons, right? So it's a reflective piece that bodies do with each other when they're attuning. You see that with caregivers and their babies, right? You see that in friendships. You see that. I think Jack has even shown that in some of his trainings, where you're going to see kind of body language pieces where someone tilts their head, the other person tilts their head. It's deeply unconscious, but it's a way for bodies to say, "I see you, I feel you, and I'm gonna do a little bit of what you're doing so that you know we're connected," right? Now, if you do it as an imitation, it feels awful in the body, completely awful. So please don't do it on purpose. That's what I'm saying for folks that don't do it in that way. But notice, and this is one of the fun things that I love to do, people watch, right? If you're new to a culture, go sit somewhere and just watch people and see how conversations evolve between folks. You will be able to tell who are good friends, who are meeting for the first time, who's doing business, right? But you will notice also that when people start getting into a rhythm of interaction, their bodies will start speaking to each other, right? Now, the second piece, that's a big piece of belonging. So I wanted to get really like specific on this because I know that, we want to give folks some kind of markers for them to use. Mirroring is something to watch for, something to let arise in your own body as you're in relationship with somebody. The other way to feel into belonging is interpersonal synchrony. I love that word. This is also something that when I worked with Jack and Leslie Wagle, I think that's how we pronounce her last name. She's the one who did this experiential. It's when a group shares a rhythm together, right? So the way human beings have found community in many ways has been through shared movement, right? Whether it's ritual, dance, um, sports events, think about that, celebrations, anything where there's a group of people that have a rhythm together, invariably you're going to feel that rhythm with them, right? And that's a way to feel a sense of belonging because you're all in the same movement together, right?
Mm. That's
So,
the dancing and all of the
yeah.
things that we see throughout every culture has.
Yeah.
Every culture moves differently, right?
Exactly. But it doesn't even have to be something like dance. If you go to
Mm,
a sporting event, right? And people are cheering and chanting, that's interpersonal synchrony. So for me, like if I went to a soccer game in Brazil, and I start hearing the rhythm of the cheers and the songs that are sung, that I'm now part of that group. I can feel into that group. I don't need to know the language for that. No one needs to know who I am in that. All of a sudden now I'm part of something much larger than me. I'm part of an organism that has its own way of moving and being. So find these opportunities. Like you don't have to join a dance group. You don't have to, you know what I mean? That's not that. But if there's something that's a group activity and you want to feel into it and it feels okay to be part of it in that way, that's one way that you can get to know a culture.
that's why we took bachata lessons when we moved to Mexico every
Yeah.
Thursday night
Yay.
at this rundown little shack kind of restaurant where when it rains, it pours and it leaks everywhere.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marcia, that example reminds me just the other day, watching a football game, seeing the marching band on the field during halftime, making different words. Like that was just mind blowing how it's orchestrated. And then the individual person can't see the bigger picture, but they're part of that whole rhythm.
Right. Another example I think it just came to mind. Um, I visited Milan recently for a training and had never been. And I was in an Airbnb. And in Milan, apparently the neighborhoods are very much their own communities, right? Well, there was one Sunday that the church bells were ringing. And one of the colleagues who lives in Milan explained that each neighborhood has their own church. And so that the church bell ringing is a call to that community, right? Which reminded me also of when there was a call to prayer when I was in Turkey, again on that trip, right? So all these were new to me because growing up in Santa Fe in the United States, we don't have a sound that calls to a community to pause and be together in a moment, right?
Right.
So there wasn't necessarily movement in that, but there is, if I put, sound waves as movement, I do believe that, right? There's a community gathering through sound in that moment that I'm like, oh, that's what this culture does to connect its people together. And I am now part of it because I've heard this sound. I may not know what to do with it. Like, did I go to the church? No. But I it was so new to me and also such a wonderful feeling. Um, I'm like, oh, okay, that's a different way. That's beautiful, right? And so and let's bring the SIA loop into that. So the SIA loop, the sensation I got was like, oh, okay, sound. There's my external sensation or sensory input, right? How does it feel in my body? Ooh, I like that. I can breathe. I can move with that a little bit. Um, the interpretations were like curiosity. I'm like, what is that about? Is that, a call to come to church, all that. I didn't have a thought about I should do anything about this because luckily it was kind of a situation where I wasn't, with a group that was asking me to do something. I was on my own. So, okay, that was quiet. And then the action, was do I want to continue listening to it? Do I feel like I need to do anything about this? No, I'm gonna stand here on the balcony where I can listen to it and honor its presence by being part of it right now and thinking about the folks that are gathering,
Mm.
you know?
Now, I want to ask you a question.
Mm,
As far as coming home, this is
mm,
related to my favorite topic. Sorry, Megan. As far as coming home, having lived through something like between 25 and 30,000 prayer calls,
yeah,
I talk about my ears missed the sound.
yeah,
My
yeah.
body missed the 5 times a day. We are measuring time,
Mm,
taking a moment.
hmm
I miss the different Mahuddin's voices because some of them we were very familiar with.
hmm
Um, that's all somatic training for the body and programming, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So what do
Yeah.
we do when we come home and you miss all that?
Oh my gosh. you miss it. You just miss it, you know? Um, this is the most difficult part about this identity. There's always going to be something you're leaving behind.
Yeah,
There's always a sense of, in Portuguese, the word is saudade. It's missing, but it's more than that. It's a longing, right?
yeah,
Um, there's always a part of you that can't come with you to the next place. But your body has a memory of those places. And because of that, it stays connected. So, you know, I think of it as having these maybe invisible cords that connect me to all the places that have been part of my life. And they're not gone forever. They are gone in time. I think that's the other hard part. And Doreen, you
yeah,
mentioned that going back. When I go back to Brazil, I part of me half expects that I'm going to go back to my grandparents' house in the way that it was. That's in the 1970s. It's like it's no long they're no longer there. The house is no longer a house. It's now an office, structure. Um, the types of tiles that were on the wall, which I can see in my memory so clearly, it's the 1970s. People have moved on with their design choices,
sure.
it's not there anymore. So, there's going to be this part of each of our experiences that exist in sort of past snapshots, both in our minds, but also in our bodies. And I think, one of the things we can give ourselves permission to do is to grieve those moments, but then do something with them, right? Like for me, writing about them really helps me keep it alive in myself, creating my own rituals. It may not be the same ritual, but like, is there something I want to mark during the day? Do I want to listen to a voice, that sounds similar? Um, do I just want to say something into the air? You know, start to kind of bring in what your body wants to do with that. Maybe in those moments during the day, you were used to doing a particular movement. Do that movement, you know? It may not be tied to all the other pieces that came around with it, um, but there's no reason why your body can't um, kind of do a little time travel of its own and touch into that time through movement, you know?
So good. Yeah, that's a holistic way, I think, of honoring story experiences and knowing that it can shape shift into a new way,
Yeah.
into where
Mhm.
you're at in the season of life.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what advice would you have for globally mobile people, or even within a country or a nation state who have high mobility or experiencing different cultures?
Mhm.
What is one way to feel authentic and comfortable and in
Yeah.
your body?
The first thing I want to say is you have permission to have your own body and your own identity, okay? Apart from all the other cultures that you've been part of, that you've grown up in, or grown up with. Um, like I said before, oftentimes the challenge is that we become very chameleon-like, you know,
Yes,
and it is very easy to lose oneself in that, but completely, right? And there are all kinds of other layers to that experience in terms of, what you feel like your calling in this world is. For me, I felt a big call to help and heal and be of service, which put together that with chameleon, and that can turn into a very difficult situation, internally. So my growth process was about reclaiming or finding who I am and not feeling bad about that. There was like this sense of guilt of, if I take this for myself, then it's taking away from others, right? So, find what your particular path is and what is it that's calling to you in this world? Who are you in this world? What is your desire, your mission? Why do you feel like you're here? What's your purpose, right? Um, and give yourself permission to come back into yourself and get to know yourself apart from all of those things, even your mission, right?
mm,
That's the first part. And that may take a long time. It doesn't happen overnight, and it can happen in many different ways. Give yourself the grace to discover that along your journey too, right? I think you would offer that to anyone else that's entering into a different culture, right? It's like, give yourself time to get to know that culture Same thing. Get to know yourself. Give yourself that time, right? The other thing is, I really want to say, folks that know how to go into different cultures, live between cultures, whether that's internationally or, domestically, with different marginalized communities, all that, it's a superpower. And I don't say that lightly. We need this right now. We really need this right now. I could go into all the research that talks about how when the skill sets that we develop, and I'm just going to say multicultural folks, there's so many different names that we can
Sure.
describe, right? So just, if this doesn't resonate with you, definitely use your own name for it. But folks that move in between cultures and with different cultures, with conscious awareness, and I'm going to put somatic awareness in there as a must, just because that's my thing, but still, yes. When we do it consciously, we have a greater capacity for understanding, for empathy, for social flexibility, for compassion, for the ability to work with different people. Multicultural teams, as we know, have a higher productivity than monocultural teams. There's so many indicators to show that when we're working and living in different cultures, both within ourselves and in our daily lives, it benefits us all. If you think about diversity in that way, our planet is biodiverse. Humans are also diverse. It comes from the same thing. We need difference in order to survive and to thrive. So, um, whatever your path is, it's going to be a balance. Find your own individuality, stay connected to the multitude of cultures that you've experienced, take care of yourself, give yourself moments where you can just sit back and watch and observe and notice, and include your body in the conversation. It has a lot to tell you if we just listen.
I'm feeling so emotional right now, Marcia. It's just it's I think I'm coming from a US American lens when I say this, and experience wise, that there's a lot of expectation and pressure of having a certain body image or weight, and I think that sometimes lends itself to not loving your body and being super critical. And I recently started up yin yoga, and shout out to my instructor, Dana, who is incredible. And it's just really reframed how I love my body and am grateful for the movement it does and will do with
Yeah.
practice. And I love how she says, what is the sensation coming up for you? What shape does your body want to take? And I just love this synergy that's happening with what you're saying. There's research, there's
Yes.
benefits in this practice, and how it shows up then how you interact in your community. So
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. And here's something I finally came to, because I think so many of us have this question of, how do I come home? I know Doreen mentioned that word, right? And what happens when home is not necessarily one place? I feel like home is in my body now,
Mm,
because this is what, and now I'm getting emotional. This is what's taken me to all those places. And I still have me,
yeah,
right? I'm not who I was when I was younger. I'm not going to be who I am when I'm older. Um, I've recently lost my father, so I can see where we all go. It's not scary. At least that's what he showed us. It's a beautiful experience with him. Um, but really, this is the only thing, our bodies are the only thing that travel with us, no matter where we are.
exactly.
And why not create a relationship with it that is mutually supportive and loving and understanding, and as much as it can be, um, a pathway to healing. And I mean, we haven't even talked about trauma and all the other things that come along with that. So I want to put a disclaimer for folks, and I'm a trauma-informed therapist. The body may not be the first place you go to yet as you're healing, right? But it was also very wise in the moment of trauma and kept you alive. I do want to say that for folks that have experienced trauma. No matter what happened in that moment or in the moments afterwards, your body knew what to do. It kept you safe. it will heal. It's resilient, right? It is. And so, however we come back home, whatever that means to you, remember that we have a traveler with us. That's our bodies.
And on that note, this was Marcia Bonato Warren. And the name of your book is, and where can people find you, please?
I'm gonna show it off because I'm so happy. It's a
Called
beautiful.
Movement and Identity.
Yes, multiculturalism, somatic awareness, and embodied code switching. For folks that want to know, there's a bunch of illustrations and open space in different fonts and things like that in the book, so that and personal stories. So it's not just a textbooky kind of thing. It's not. It's an invitation to just dive in wherever you want to in the book and explore. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Do you have anything to add, Megan, before we sign off?
Nothing to add. I think that was complete. I feel complete. And thank you, Marcia, for sharing your brilliant wisdom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for inviting me. Thank you.
And from Nomadic Diaries, we sign off by saying sayonara, ma salama, and hasta luego.